Welcome back to Programming with Qt Widgets. In the previous episode, we saw how to do drag and drop in general. In this episode, we'll zoom in on model view programming and see how do you do drag and drop there. As in the previous episode, we'll first look on the drag side and then on the drop side. But actually, we'll start even before that, because what do we get out of the box? We do actually get something. But first, there are three settings to be aware of. If you want your list view, your table view, or your tree view to be able to participate in any drag and drop game, you need to call set drag enabled on the view. This is both if you want to encode the data and take care of it all yourself, as we'll see in a few minutes, but also if you just want what is built in to it. To accept the drops or to have it play in a drop role, you'll have to call set accept drops. And finally, you need to call set drop indicator shown, which puzzles me like no tomorrow. Why is not the default? But hey, that is how it is. I have an example here. Well, I'll show you this code in action and show you what the user interface looks like by default. To model view, there is two sides. There's the view side, the model side, well, and then the delegate, but let's just focus on the view and the model now. Usually you wouldn't do anything to the views. The drag and drop is already built into them, and the view can then ask the model information about drag and drop. And the two existing models that we already do have that do not require subclassing, namely QStandardItemModel and QStandardItemModel, already do have built into them. So what we see here is a QStandardList model in action with just a few names. And I set it up here. I create a widget. I have add list view, add tree view, add table view. And each of those is just put into the layout and have the model set and set drag enable true and set accept drops. And then we can play with this internal move, which is another facility in this. But let's just see what it looks like. So I can press down here, I drag it around, and you can see the cursor changes, and I can put it in between. I can put it on top, which means that I'll change it. So this is by default from QStandardList view. QStandardList model, sorry. We have it here, QStandardList model. Okay, this is a QList view. Here is a QTree view and a QTable view. And I can do the same thing in my QTree view here, moving in between to add items. What I can't do in my table view is to move in between. There I can only add or put them on top of other items. And of course, my views here works with across the views, which would not be the case if I had chosen this set drag drop mode to be internal move. And you can see there's a few different options here: no drag, drag only, drag drop, and internal move. All methods on you go back again. All methods on my view. And if I do that, I can still drag and drop here. Ooh, I moved. Okay, interesting. Now I can move. That's a internal move, right? So I can move them around, and I can move it to be at a different position here. But if I do it inside of my table, then. But what I really wanted to show you is that I cannot drag between the items. So this is only reordering inside of the view. And what you saw there is that if I actually drop something below here, that means at the end or outside, that means append for the table, it seems. Okay, let's get that away. So that's the set drag enable, set accept drops, and I could have started another instance of this and have shown you that in action. However, what I'd like to show you instead is, if we just go back to my slide for a second here, inside of your Qt applications or inside of your Qt SDK, you have this example called dropside, just loaded from Qt Creator, and it looks, let me just find this one again. It looks like this, if I can get it on top here. And what you'll notice is that I can drop onto this one here. And what I'll see what I drop onto, and that's the cool thing about this example, is that I can see the format that is being presented. So if I, for example, get myself a shell up here and just drag something from my shell over here, you can see that it offers as plain text and it also offers it as HTML. And if I drag from here, you notice it offers it at application/xx blah 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 model data list. So that's a drag and drop from in here. It does that with a special tag, which is important if you want to maintain that and also offer your own drag and drop facility. Let me also just show you what it looks like in the let me show you what it looks like with a QStandardItemModel, because what string list model do not offer is a hierarchy, but that is offered by QStandardItemModel. And what I can do now is if I drag in between here, then it will become a child, not in the list version, well, in the tree version over here. If I drag in between, then it will become a child. Why did I not see that? Drag, no, it will be reordering. If I drop on it, it will become a child. And now you saw that I have this item underneath the other item here. Obviously, I cannot see those children neither in the list or in the table. I can only see that in the tree, but they are there. And that, of course, is slightly confusing because now when I drag on top of if I drag on top of 0,0 up here, I would have thought as a user that I would update it to be 0,0, but actually it became a child, as you can see, of the 0,0. So that's just something to be aware of if you ever use QStandardItemModel and drag and drop. But chances are that you roll your own QAbstractItemModel or QAbstractTableModel or QAbstractListModel subclasses and implement the drag and drop yourself. And we'll see that right after this ad. Lambda expression, move semantics, coroutines, modules. Oh, there are so many things in C++ that you do not know about if you're on C++ 98 still. It's no shame to be on C++ 98, but it might make sense to migrate your code. Which part is important for you to migrate to? Which should you just, well, shrug at and say, let the other kids play with that? We can help you decide. Talk to us. So in my model, as I said, I have to provide the information for drag and drop, not on the view, but in the model. And if I subclass from my own, or a subclass and implement my own model, what I need to do for drag and drop to be enabled, at least for drag to be enabled, is that I need to implement flags, which you saw in the model view section already. And in here, I will now need to tell it whether the item is drag enabled. And I cannot drag an invalid. What would that mean? Dragging the root item or outside of any items, that doesn't make any sense. But if I drag an existing item, then I need to tell it, yes, item is draggable. And of course, this is per index. So some index could be draggable and some not, but that would be that would just be possible by testing the index here. And then I also need to tell what data type do I drag out. And that I do by implementing MIME types. And here I tell what is the types to drag out. And see, this is the superclasses MIME types, just in case that it had some MIME types of its own, which it likely does, because as you saw, there was this special MIME type for drag and drop inside of the widget itself. Now, one thing to observe here is that MIME types do not take an index. So I have no way of telling, hey, I'm about to drag and drop this particular index. I would imagine that you could somehow make that happen by, if at nothing else, then subclassing from the view and doing some magic over there by listening to mouse press event or something like that. But that's a super, super advanced setup. So tell it that you can track here, and tell it that you what the MIME type is. And finally, you have to encode the data, and you do that using the method MIME data. It takes a bunch of indexes, those that are being dragged out, and returns a MIME data for that. And it might very well look something like this. I simply run through my list of indexes, and I get a string list out of these. And then I take my QAbstractItemModel, which is what this. Oh no, I take my. I take my superclass. It should have been superclass whatever here. It could have been a QAbstractItemModel, which is likely as in my example here, but it could have been something completely different. I take my superclass, ask it for the MIME data for the indexes here, and then I on myself set MIME data set text with these indexes. So that's just dragging out simple text. It's code that comes from the example I'll show you in just a second. Finally, on the drag side, I can implement supported drag actions, and if I do so, that's how I tell that, hey, you can move things out from me, but you can't copy them, or you can link and copy but not move, or whatever of those options that I have there. And if I support moving out, then I need to implement the virtual method remove rows, which is how the view will tell me, hey, the user actually dragged these data out of view. So there is no way that I somewhere will be starting the drag as I did when I implement drag and drop myself, because that's part of the views action. But what the view will do, it will of course instantiate a class, or it will instantiate the QDrag and start drag on that one, or call exec on that one. And then it will tell the model, hey model, I removed these rows. That was the drag side. Of course, I can have an application that accepts drops but not drags. And now let's look at the drop side. In the drop side, I need to implement flags again. And this time I need to specify Qt item is drop enabled, and likely I would have drag and drop in my application. So I would have item is drag enabled and item is drop enabled. But at least a difference from the previous slide where we talked about the drag side, it does make sense to drop on an empty area, which means either drop in between items or drop at the end to append to my list. So that's what if index is valid not, that means drop between the items or after the items. And if it is valid, it means drop on an item. So if I can only add items in between, then I would only have this one enabled. Or if I could only update existing items, I would only have this one enabled. That is how I tell Qt that, hey, you can drop stuff on me. And then whenever the drop happens, drop MIME data will be called. And the default implementation of that is to simply take the data and unpack it. And then it will call insert rows on me. And if there's rows to be inserted, obviously, and it will call set data on me with the data that it's unpacked. But if I want finer control for one reason or the other, then I can re-implement drop MIME data. And then as for the drag side, I can also specify which actions I support simply by supported, this time drop actions. Yes, you can copy on me, you can move on me, or you can just copy on me or just link or whatever on me. And that's everything there is to know. Let me just show you all these bits put together in an example right now. Wait, yes, but not so fast. I don't get it. Actually, I didn't get it. I was spending 10 minutes between the last shot and this shot here to try to figure something out, because all of a sudden I realized I tell you that you do not need to implement drop MIME data, because the mod view framework will call insert rows and set data on you. That made me wonder, why on earth do I need to implement MIME types and MIME data then? Couldn't it just go and fetch the data out of the model? And certainly it could. So let me just clarify that. If you still only want your new model to support drag and drop inside the model with the facilities that exist in QListView, with that weird MIME type that we saw before, then you do not need to implement MIME data, and you do not need to implement MIME types. Then you will just go to the superclass and you get those, and it will support drag and drop. What it will do is that it will go and ask for data and encode that data from your model. One thing to be aware of when you look at that code is, however, that the only roles that it will encode are those that are built in. So no special roles of yours. Okay, that's one thing to it. The other thing to it is that if you then do want to drag out of your models, for example, text plain, then you need to implement this. Otherwise, you'll only be dragging out stuff. And then the other side here, you do not need to implement drop MIME data if you are simply just drag and dropping with the facilities given by QListView, QTableView, QTreeView. But if you need to accept drops from outside, then you need to implement it so you can decode your data. And now let's look at the example. The example is exactly what you saw before. This time, however, so it's the same here for the view part. However, this time I've implemented a QString list model myself, which actually, funny enough, was the very first example I ever did in model view programming. And that was before QString list model existed in Qt itself. And then the people from Trolltech saw it and said, hey, that's a cool idea, and took it inside of Qt itself. But in any case, I call it my model. But it's the same thing as a QString list model. You even see here, underscore list. I have not used that for 15 years. So there we are. I simply take the list here and remember it. Row count is just how many items there is in it. Data, well, hopefully there is not anything new in this. If there is, then go back and watch the episode on model view programming. Header data, same as before. And now we get to flags. I say, hey, if it's valid, not, then drop is enabled. So I can drop outside. I can drop in between. And if it is if it is valid, then drop is also enabled. I can drop on top of the items. And I can, well, that was not a good example. Here it is. I can drop on top of items, and drag is also enabled. My set data, simply update the data there. And now I have insert rows. I need that for the internal drag and drop. And remove rows, also needed for the internal drag and drop. And MIME types is implemented here to be able to support text plain. And if it's text plain, then I'll take the data and I'll simply encode it like this, as we saw before, calling QAbstractItemModel, which is my superclass in this example here. And finally, here is an example saying, well, this is not really needed. Well, certainly it is needed if I drop from outside. But I'll leave that as an exercise for the interested viewer to try and enable this and then get a drag and drop from outside onto here with something that is text plain. And finally, my supported action. That's it for this episode on programming with Qt Widgets. We now saw drag and drop, and we saw drag and drop inside of the model view framework. I hope I didn't confuse you more than what was good. In the next episode, which is the final episode of this series, we'll talk about event filters. Until then, have a great time.